So to set the scene, my story is slightly different, but as I say, there are similarities and I do resonate with a lot of what you've been saying. But just to set the scene and put my story into context, I'd like to share a few details about me and my daughter. I'm 74 years of age, sadly, and my daughter is 39, and her name is Alice, and she became a care statistic when she was just 15 years old, which means that she spent more years in the care system than she has at home in her family home. She left home in a very hurried and unplanned way, a crisis situation having arisen, which made the situation at home both dangerous and untenable for all the family. It was the only course of action that we could do. So it wasn't a planned one-way meetings, it just had to happen. I can still remember the day she left, and I remained quite traumatized for a long time afterwards. My overriding feeling at the time was one of guilt and sadness. Surely a parent was supposed to be able to look after their child in the family home, not having to have her taken out of the home. I used to long for Alice to have had a broken leg or something similar that I could take her to the doctors, a hospital or whatever, and get it fixed. But with her sorts of problems, I wasn't able to fix as a parent. I left her bedroom untouched for almost a year, and the impact on the family was immense and has had a long-standing, lasting effect. People who knew Alice in my hometown stopped talking about her. I think they were too embarrassed to ask about her, and that made my feelings of sadness and grief even worse because it was as though she didn't exist anymore. During her 25 years in care, which in itself sounds terrible, she's lived in 4 different settings, and wherever she's lived, I've always tried to be a constant hands-on parent, striving to be involved as much as possible. This attitude of being a parent with going to see her a lot has been accepted in some places and welcome in some places, but not always in others. And where it hasn't been welcome, it's added to my sadness and anxiety. I tried to visit Alice as often as I could, even when I was still employed as a full-time teacher. As a parent, as Jason's family have said, it is crucial to establish and maintain positive relationships with the staff, and it must be a relationship that is based on trust and mutual respect. Your child must be aware of this, as it gives them a feeling of security and confidence. And it is very important that you have a good look round before your child goes to a new place, as it is essential for you to get a feel of the place to find out what the ethos and philosophy underpins their care. I really want to stress how important it is to visit a place before your child goes. I remember coming here and thinking, wow, I'd like to live there. What a fabulous house it is. And I was so thrilled, and it really, really cheered me up when I saw this place where Alice is now living. You've got the right to go there. You've got the right to ask questions. It is important to remember that you are still the parent, and it is your child that is going into their care. You need to ensure that you will be involved in all decision-making, future planning, and any problems that arise, which is exactly what Andrew and Andrea said about things happening with Jason. Parents must feel always that their opinions, wishes, and feelings are respected and considered at all times. Do not be ignored. Peter sitting here might think that's very difficult with me to be ignored because I think I'm an old teacher and I never forget I'm a teacher. Some of the homes that Alice has lived in did not welcome my input and thought it to be interference. She was their problem and no longer my concern. I was expected to just become a bystander in her life. This obviously added to my feelings of guilt and sadness and didn't have a positive effect on either me or Alice, quite the opposite. I do feel sorry for people who are in care who don't have parents like us to stand up and fight for our children. Partnership, trust and confidence are the most important components needed for a positive experience for both your child and you. Obviously, as a parent, more criteria need to be considered, i.e. the environment, safety, consistency of well-trained staff. But in my opinion, the first three are vital, and trust is the key factor. Trust, trust, trust. You've got to be able to trust who is looking after your child. Your child is in the care home hands, not yours, sadly. And as a parent, you've got to feel that your child is safe, cared for, and assured that she's getting the best possible care. A care home can never replicate a normal family home, but it can try and provide an environment as close to it as possible. And as a parent, you need to feel part of the care home family, to be welcomed when you visit, just as you are, Andrew and Andrea, be invited to activities, and generally think of your home, the home, as your extended family. Just as a sort of side note, but to sort of stress how important the care home is, Alice's father and my husband died 2 years ago, which was obviously a blow to both of us, and we grieved for a long time. But the support that Alice and I both received during the grieving process was absolutely wonderful. And I really think it helped us to both get through a very hard and dark place. Being part of the care plans and future objectives is also very important. And it is very hard to believe that although my child has been in care for 24 years, I still find it very emotional to come to terms with that. It saddens me still. However, having the right support is a real source of strength and helps me to accept the situation and live with this reality. I'd like now to just give you a brief resume of the 4 different settings that Alice has lived in, together with my experiences of being a parent for each one. As I said earlier, Alice had to leave home when she was only 15 and was considered to be a child. So for the first 3 years, until she reached the age of 18, she lived in a children's home. And then she had to move into an adult setting, which was a big thing and very scary. It proved to be unsettling for Alice when she had to move, as the adult care system is very big. She was quite happy in the children's home. They looked after her very well, but I wasn't really a part of it. She was their child, and I didn't see her very often, which really was very, very hard. The next place that she moved to was adequate, and I think I can just say adequate. It wasn't wonderful. I was welcome there, but the staff, although very well-meaning, didn't seem, compared to what is happening now, they didn't seem to be very well trained and didn't seem as though they were actually interested in progressing with Alice. She didn't have any objectives or plans in place. I was able to visit her and maintain close contact with her, but I felt it was rather a place that she was just there, somewhere for her to go, rather than somewhere where she would be helped to progress, to move on, to have all the wonderful things that Jason's now got. She just did nothing. It was a containing place rather than a place where any plans or goals were to be found. As ever, as I put here, parents' involvement is essential, welcomed by the home or not. They wouldn't get rid of me. Sometimes it was very necessary to remind the staff that although your child was living with them, she still had a family and still had loving parents who wanted to have some sort of lot of contact, and she had love and support from her real family. This partnership and mutual working together benefits both parent and child in care. They can see that you're working together. They can see that it is a partnership. But because I've found, actually, I don't know whether you found this, but the thing that underpins my feelings at all times is guilt. Why did this happen to me? Why couldn't I look after my child at home? Why did she have to leave home? And it never goes away, that feeling of guilt, but it can be helped if she's in the right place. Sadly, this home disappeared and ceased to be for various reasons, which I'm not going to go into. The company went into liquidation. And Alice again was moved to somewhere else. The residents were dispersed to various places, which was very upsetting because she lost contact with the staff and with the people that she'd lived with for 3 years. They didn't go together. They were all dispersed into different places. This had a very bad effect on Alice, and sadly, Alice was sectioned soon after this. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. This was the worst period ever for me. It was a very dilapidated, unfriendly building, high security, housing some very, very dangerous and very disturbed patients. This was my lowest point as a parent. Luckily, I was able to get Alice out of there fairly rapidly after her section had expired. And although she seemed oblivious to her surroundings, I think I was more concerned about them than her. Her mental state didn't suffer too badly. Quite soon after she left, it was closed down. There was a murder in there. A patient was murdered. I can tell you what sort of place it was. It was horrendous. After that, Alice moved to a place near Newcastle upon Tyne, and it was run by the Castlebeck organisation. Now, of course, the name conjures up all sorts of connotations, and I'll deal with that later. But due to the distance and the progressing illness of Alice's father, who had Parkinson's, I was only able to visit Alice once a week, every other weekend. At the time, I didn't have any major concerns about it. Alice didn't display any anxieties or concerns. I must stress again, though, being a presence is so important. Staff need to be aware that you are still a parent and have rights. I was made welcome, but I wasn't involved in any decision-making or planning with regards to Alice's life. In fact, I didn't think she had any plans or objectives. Again, it was just somewhere to put Alice, for Alice to be in care and looked after reasonably. I felt quite shut out of her life. She was their responsibility. I was on the sidelines and I had to remain there. In retrospect, and compared to Alice's life at Kirkside now, I clearly can see that they were very, very understaffed there, and they had a policy of containment rather than treatment. When the Winterbourne View scandal hit the headlines, Alice had left, but I was very concerned as to whether anything had happened to her while she'd been at Chester Home. This is a little sort of humorous little anecdote that I asked her tentatively whether anything had happened to her while she'd been there, whether anybody had been inappropriate or done anything that had upset her, that she wanted to talk about, to which her immediate answer was yes. My heart sank. But when I probed further, she told me that somebody had been in her room, and my heart was pounding. They had been in her room and removed an old pair of trainers. Now, the trainers, she has an obsession with trainers, and that Alice considered that to be the highest form of abuse, to remove her trainers. So I breathed a huge sigh of relief, as you can imagine, and I thought, well, I can live with that, trainers are trainers. So now we come to the present day, where Alice has now been in Kirkside for 13 years. One of the first people to move in, I think, when it was first changed. It's the longest period in her care journey. Ownership has obviously changed since she moved in, but the support and care has remained the same. I trust the staff to care for Alice. Trust, trust, trust. That is what is key to everything. The staff make me feel part of the regime here, and I'm always welcomed. The management team always take time to talk to me to discuss any problems, and this is vital to make a parent feel confident and remain stress-free. It is very hard, as you will know, Andrew and Andrea, to come to terms with the fact that your child is in care. And for me, the fact that she left home at 15 years of age and has remained in care ever since. But I do have some peace of mind now, knowing that she calls Kirkside her home. She regularly visits home, her family home, to stay with me, as I need her now. I haven't, I'm on my own. My husband died. And she looks forward to that, but she also returns to Kirkside willingly and, without any bother. She wants to go back to her home, and that is how it should be. A parent must be listened to and have a voice. Without this, having a child in care, from my perspective, would be extremely difficult and make life very hard. So I've put here, now I've shared both our journeys into the care site, I hope you have an insight into the highs and the lows of being a parent. Alice has been in good places, not so good places, and is now in a very good place. The message must always be the same. It must be a partnership based on trust, sharing, and respect. As a parent, you must have all those ingredients for a place to know that your child is in the best home possible if it is not viable for her ever to return home. To conclude this presentation, talk, whatever, I'd like to say that it is hard, as you will know, Andrea and Andrew. It's very hard when you have to have a child in care. I live with the questions forever, thinking, was I a failure? Was it my fault? Should I have done things differently? Should I have persevered and hoped that the situation would get better and things wouldn't turn out like they have done? These questions continually swirl around your head and compound feelings of guilt, which are constantly with you and sometimes hard to erase. It's not all doom and gloom, though, as we've seen from your wonderful story. These dark feelings can be lessened, lightened, and even sometimes forgotten if you are able to find the right home setting for your child. As stated earlier, we must have mutual respect and there must be good practice to make the placement happy and successful. And luckily for me, after a few false starts, I have found such a home for my daughter where she's safe, nurtured, cared for by professional and highly trained. And this is one thing that I feel Signet do. They train people very, very well. There's a very good training program, and you can see that they deal with things so well. I'm extremely grateful, and at least I feel confident now that Alice is in the right place. So I'd like to just say, I hope you found this presentation talk as whatever has been of use, and in part it describes how it feels to be a parent of a child in care. I hope it helps other parents and makes them feel less isolated, which is a feeling that I did have at first. You feel as though it is only you that it's happened to. Why should your child have to go into care? But it's not. Lots of parents have to do it, sadly. But it's nice to be able to share your feelings and experiences, and it makes the sort of journey a lot better. So I think I've spoken enough now. I'm losing where I've got to. I've just put one more little thing, that this has been a therapeutic exercise for me in a way. I've recalled lots of experiences, both for Alice and myself, that we've had during the last 24 years. Some good, some not so good. But it's reinforced my view that Alice is in the best place now, cared for by highly trained people and compassionate staff. And like you, Andrea and Andrew, you can sleep at night a lot better, knowing that your child is being looked after so well. So thank you for listening, and I hope that was okay.
Sue, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us all today.